Hi and welcome to the 6th part in preparing for the Tomb of Sargeras. This is for people who want to step up the level of raiding going into the next tier. The release date for that tier has now been announced, so this is going to be the penultimate part. And this is going to be on how to optimize DPS cooldowns. So first of all, we need to be aware of the main sources of DPS cooldown. So the first one is DPS cooldowns in your spell book. These are the ones that are part of your class and spec. Second are DPS potions, which you should be carrying around in decent numbers. Third are on-use abilities, usually from trinkets such as Horn of Valor. Fourth would be random procs. Again, these are usually from trinkets, but could also include from set bonuses. 5, external cooldowns, such as heroism. And 6, encounter-specific cooldowns, such as the extra action button on Cooldown, the buff from the bats on Sargeras, but it could also be said to include periods of time when a boss takes extra damage, such as on Scorpion. What do you care whether you're doing more damage or the boss is taking more damage? You're still doing more damage overall. Now, to get the maximum benefit from cooldowns, #1 rule is you want to stack up as many as possible at the same time. The whole is always greater than the sum of its parts, as the cumulative effect of stacking produces amazing results. So whenever you can line up as many cooldowns as possible, that's what you want to do. Now, the first and easiest technique to make sure that you are using is the pre-pot. Now, the way this works is if you use a DPS potion in combat, the cooldown is suspended when you are in combat. You have to wait till you come out of combat before it starts. Now, the idea with the pre-pot is if you use a potion before combat starts, then the cooldown begins. That cooldown won't be arrested as soon as combat starts. It will carry on because it's already started. So by using a potion before combat starts, you will get the benefit of some of that potion, whatever the remaining duration is once you start combat, and later on you will get the benefit of being able to use another potion. So it allows you to use 2 DPS potions in one fight. Now, the trick with this, of course, is to maximize the benefit by pre-potting at the last possible second. This is where you have to judge within your raid what are the chances of someone ninja pulling. If your raid can be disciplined and not pull early, then you can leave it until there's 1 second to go before you pre-pot. If you've got nerves of steel, you might even leave it till half a second, but how many of us don't trust our raiders to ninja pull? The other thing we should bear in mind is at the start of a fight is also when we tend to be using other cooldowns as well. The start of a fight, most of the mechanics of the fight are not there. We usually get a fair amount of time just to hit the boss a lot. And you also want to be using your DPS cooldowns. You may even use heroism. It depends on the fight and it depends on the tactics of the fight as well. You also may well have random procs on your trinket. In other words, most of the 6 sources of DPS cooldown may actually be in effect at the start of the fight. This is why it's no surprise if you look at the DPS done by a raid, you have a massive peak right at the start of most fights. This again emphasizes just how powerful it is stacking all your DPS cooldowns together. So given that you've used a pot just before the encounter started, so that a minute later you can use another pot. Of course, you don't have to use it after that minute. You can choose the most opportune time to use it. You also want to make sure that you're using that second pot with cooldowns as well. So you want to select when is the best time to use it. And in choosing the best time, you should also consider this with cooldowns in general. We don't always want to use our cooldowns as soon as they are available. We have to consider a few things. First of all, is there anything that might disrupt your use of that cooldown? If a phase change occurs and there's a period of time when you can't do any DPS, this is evident on fights such as Elisand, Cooldown, Sargeras. If that's the case, then you don't want to be using cooldowns if they won't be completed before that phase change. The only exception to this, of course, is if you really need to push a tight DPS check, in which case you accept a bit of wasted DPS cooldown usage for the sake of getting the phase over quickly. You should also consider movement. Are you entering a period of the fight where you might get a random ability on you that causes you to move? This could be said to include the Flames of Sargeras on Cooldown, for example, Burning Pitch on Croesus. Anything like this is not an ideal time to be using your DPS cooldowns unless you can very quickly move out and then very quickly move back into a DPS position. You should also consider what are your priority targets. Different players in a raid will have different priority targets. You ideally want to use your DPS cooldowns on your priority targets. But just remember this, you don't want to hold off on a DPS cooldown so long that you miss out on an entire application. So let's say you have a 3-minute cooldown and the fight lasts 4 minutes. You can use it at the start. That would make it available to use after 3 minutes. You've got another minute for the fight to work. Let's say the DPS cooldown lasts 20 seconds. Realistically gives you 40 seconds grace for when to use it. Now, let's say you've still got a 3-minute cooldown, but this time the fight lasts 5 minutes. Again, it's not possible to use your DPS cooldown 3 times, so there's no point in using it immediately after 3 minutes. You've got over a minute where you can use it and get the full benefit before the fight ends. So you will be able to use it at the most opportune moment. But let's say the fight is going to last 6.5 minutes. Well, here you could use it at the start. If you used it on 3 minutes, you would then have it available at 6 minutes and you would still get the full use out of it in the remaining half a minute. Whereas if you delayed it and didn't use it at the 3-minute mark and used it, say, at the 4-minute mark, you would not be able to use that third application. This is generally ill-advised. Because you're missing out on a whole application of it, you would probably want to use it on cooldown in that situation. However, you still have to think tactically. If there is a period of time when you absolutely need to burst down an ad or finish a phase off really quickly, you may have to use a cooldown at a time which is not necessarily best for your personal DPS, but that's how you need to use it. One good way of judging when to use DPS cooldowns might well be to look at logs of players that you know perform well on an encounter. They may be in your guild, but they may well be in another guild, and have a look at their logs, look at their buffs, and see when they use their DPS cooldowns. Check that they're doing the same general jobs as you, so that you're not comparing apples with pears. And that is often a pretty good way to work out if there's a better use of your cooldowns on a particular fight. So I hope that was useful. As always, the final part will be on survivability, which will be next week, and then we should be pretty much into the Tomb of Sargeras opening. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to subscribe for further content, and also share with other people that you think might find it useful. And until next time, I'll see you later.